Human Rights Campaign officially declared a state of emergency for LGBTQ people living in the United States, citing a rash of bills across state legislatures they say target the community. This comes as violence erupted during a protest outside a meeting of the Glendale Unified School District Board in California, which voted to recognize June as Pride Month yesterday. LGBTQ activists accused accounts like Libs of TikTok of encouraging violence against the community. Quote, "They're just straight up endorsing mass shootings at schools that feature pride colors," right at the top of the replies, thanks to Twitter Blue. That was in response, I think that was
a specific tweet.
Yeah,
that was not a good tweet.
Yeah, it was a tweet that did it exactly that. So when asked, what are we going to do about this? And the response from someone who was anti the Pride Month designation wrote, can you spell AK-47 or something that very much alluded to the idea that the way to respond to this is to do a mass shooting at a school.
Sure, that was, very bad tweet. A lot of edgy, bad, violent rhetoric evoking content on Twitter in all sorts of directions. I don't know that would be enough for me to label something a crisis, but as I've said many times, I object to many of these bills because I don't think it's really the government's job to inject itself into these controversies in general. So, where Republicans who support them are also creating some headaches for themselves down the road with, the bill bans on drag performances are all going to get overturned by courts and
Robby,
those kinds of things.
First of all, you don't know that. Some of these bills are actually getting passed.
No, they're getting passed, but they're going to be.
Okay, so in the interim, people should go without their constitutional rights while it works its way through the courts?
Is that what I said?
Well, what are you saying? Why don't you clarify?
I'm saying that these bills are bad ideas and are unconstitutional. I mean, haven't read every single one of them, but many of them are unconstitutional and will likely be struck down by courts.
Right, and I think a lot of people are concerned that hoping that a right-leaning Supreme Court, which has ignored precedent in recent history and overturned Roe v. Wade, isn't much of a comfort, especially since in the interim, people's rights are being abridged in pretty significant ways. So some other people have reported, the Washington Post reported that the Proud Boy members were among the anti-LGBTQ protesters in Glendale. There is an argument that this is not organic opposition. This wasn't about teachers and a school board. These were outside agitators who came in trying to be disruptive. There were accusations from both sides that the police were working to help the other side, perhaps predictably so.
You can't accuse the U.S. government in general of going leniently on the Proud Boys as an organization. Many of their leaders being prosecuted, one of the Proud Boys leaders being prosecuted for conspiracy. It was just sentenced, right?
The accusation isn't that the U.S. government is doing it. The accusation is that there are many police officers who have been pictured with various Nazi tattoos or insignia like the Punisher logo that suggest a alliance or leaning toward more right-wing ideologies, and that they make a choice. They make choices to intervene in these kind of disputes on the side of the more conservative actor. That's the allegation, not that it's the government intervening.
Right. I mean, that might be the case. Again, law enforcement has arrested the Proud Boys leader, Enrique Tarrio. He's guilty of seditious conspiracy and is facing, I think, 18 years or something like that?
Yeah, so back to this conflict, Ian Miles Cheong, a very well-known right-wing commentator on Twitter, tweeted, "What should be done about teachers, doctors, and psychologists who promote, enable, or perform gender-affirming care?" One of the responses was, "Kill them." This is in line with the first tweet.
Not a response from Ian Miles Cheong.
No, a response to him was, "Kill them." The Libs of TikTok tweeted, we talked about this earlier, "Imagine walking into your elementary school and this is what greets you. What do you do? It's a picture of kids sitting under a rainbow." And that response was, "What is mass shooting for 500, Pat?" A Jeopardy joke, I suppose.
Content that promotes violent behavior should be taken down from the site.
Another response to that same Ian Miles Cheong tweet was, to what should we do about this problem? Is someone with a blue check mark saying helicopter, wood chipper, compost in that order, suggesting that you should chop up and compost people who have these ideological disagreements. Tim Pool tweeted, "The dads are starting to rise up against leftist pedophiles." This characterization that people have said is provoking violence. If you really believe that it's what's happening is pedophilia, maybe you feel entitled to kill the people that you think are doing that to children. And of course, one of the responses, another blue check response is, I don't care how it looks or sounds. I salivate at this. Groomers deserve violence, and that's exactly what they're getting. So the question is, at some point, is there going to be legal liability for people who are very much stoking the violence on Twitter and elsewhere? Is Twitter going to become responsible? Do they have an obligation to curb any of the content that's an explicit call to violence, the likes of which
explicit calls to violence are against the policies of Twitter and all other social media sites, and they should absolutely take down such content.
It doesn't look like it's happened so far, though. So what do you make of that?
I mean, content, as we know from content moderation, it's always uneven, and there's lots of cases where things get taken down that shouldn't have been taken down, and things get left up that should have been left up. I don't know that it shows anything of anything, but it should certainly be taken down. Explicit calls to violence should be reported. Anybody can report them. You can report it.
Yeah, they've been very high-profile accounts like Alejandro Caraballo, who we've both disagreed with in the past, have been quoting, screen grabbing, and raising these tweets, particularly those of Tim Pool. Remember, Tim Pool was
I don't think Tim Pool. I'm not saying that Tim Pool's account should be taken down. I'm saying that you were reading people who were responding to him with calls for violence.
Well, sure. Well, she's pointed out, Alejandra has pointed out that Tim Pool, this is a quote from her from a few hours ago, was openly justifying the Club Q shooting. The Allen, Texas Nazi shooter was a fan of his. That's not his fault necessarily, but it's true. And she's alleging that he's inciting violence, and she specifically pulled up a tweet of his from November last year saying, we shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. Club Q had a grooming event. How do we prevent the violence and stop the grooming? And it is hard, regardless if you think there should be a censorship or a content moderation decision made about him, it's hard not to see the connection between that kind of language. You know, how do we stop this? The people who are saying this now about this conflict outside the Glendale school system, how do we stop this? And all of the people who are responding, we stop it with violence.
I think that those people want to stop it with precisely the legislation that you are calling attention to, not with violence, but with changes to the law that prevent drag performances in front of minors and transitioning
let's
stuff
stick with what's
for
happening
kids.
right here.
I think that's the.
But no, but what's happened right here is that a school board voted. There's been school boards that have done conservative votes all across this country, and that's just the democratic process. And what happens?
For sure.
This school board voted to recognize June as Pride Month.
Sure thing.
And as a consequence, it seems like Proud Boys and other conservative agitators, some of which are not actually local to this community, have come in and participated in a violent mob thug event. And the question is, are the people who have been critical of violent, disruptive events in the past when they were not ideologically aligned with them, going to have an issue with a bunch of Proud Boy right-wing thugs starting a violent altercation outside of a school where people's children have to go and learn every day?
People engaged in violence at events should be arrested and prosecuted and should face whatever the relevant punishment is under the criminal justice system, as have, as I said, many of the Proud Boys, including their senior leadership, with respect to other violent riots that took place, including at the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, this thing was really outrageous. Apparently, there's a video that was posted of some far-right people who are being characterized, at least as far-right extremists, pepper spraying a religious clergy member who was there in support of the LGBTQ families. I think it's worth noting that this is such a many of us, I think, probably thought June being Pride Month is one of the less controversial types of things that could exist. We saw all kinds of backlash, including some violent backlash when there was an effort to name February Black History Month. This certainly isn't novel, but with the passing of history, most of us look back and say that that's a kind of a bizarre reaction to simply labeling a month celebrating a group of people that do exist in the country and who have a right to have certain kind of recognition. You know, do you think this is evidence of any kind of jumping of the shark on the behalf of the Republican Party? And do you think that folks like DeSantis, who have really made their bones in the culture wars, are going to be forced by incidents like this to walk it back at all?
I mean, I think there's a backlash going on to some of the excesses of transgender-related issues, and I think that is being used as a kind of that is allowing a greater criticism of LGB stuff more generally. It's like broadening into a general criticism of Pride that's being like laundered through concern about gender stuff and concern about children. But I do think a lot of the people involved in making those criticisms actually just, they object to LGBT content regardless of the age of people involved, and even if it's not just gender stuff but also sexuality stuff, probably objected all along and were just quiet about it because at the political moments the anti-LGBT equality side has been on the defensive and has been losing for years and years and years, or more people are we all know that the poll numbers that people are strongly in favor, majorities of people are in favor of gay marriage and non-discrimination and such things. It feels like it's reaching some kind of tipping point of backsliding. Perhaps that's just us looking at social media, a platform that has suddenly become very right-wing, Twitter. Or perhaps it suggests that activists on behalf of the LGBT community should reorient their tactics to inspire less backlash, or maybe there's going to be a backlash to the conservative backlash against Pride and the kind of like sweeping denunciation of everybody as groomers that I think probably tunes out normal people. Normal people are probably like, what the F is a groomer?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not speaking for myself. I'm just trying to diagnose the medium. I think everybody should leave everybody else alone. And if you don't agree with how people are raising their kids or whatever, that's just like none of your responsibility, none of your problem, and just mind your own business is my general, and the government should leave everybody alone. And then wouldn't we be a happier, not at each other's throats kind of society, Briahna? Just let the government leave everybody alone.
I can't endorse that entirely because I think the role of government is to do a lot of things that can't be reduced to localities, including keeping a standing army, including mass infrastructure projects, including looking out for the health and welfare of the country, big social safety net programs like Medicare for All and Social Security that have enormously improved the quality of life in the United States of America and for its citizens. But I do think they should stay out of people's family lives and allow parents to raise kids.
You want to have your cake and eat it too. I don't know. I'm going to go without cake in general. Tomorrow on Rising, Jessica Burbank will be filling in for Briahna. I'm just finding this out. Tomorrow you're not going to be with us.
No, I'm going back to New York to attend my 20th year high school reunion. I'm looking forward to that. I might have to wear masks due to air quality concerns, but it'll keep us all looking a little bit more youthful perhaps than we otherwise would be looking.
Well, have a great trip, and I'll be looking forward to having Jessica with us. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And I will see you back here tomorrow. Take care.
Take care.